Welcome to Committee for Wyndham, your business voice in Wyndham, the podcast that champions the growth, innovation, and success of businesses in our region. As a not-for-profit, non-partisan organisation, we proudly represent a diverse membership across a wide range of industries, advocating for the continued prosperity and development of Wyndham. Join us as we dive into the latest business trends, economic insights, and community initiatives shaping our region's future. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Wyndham Tech School, empowering the next generation of innovators and problem solvers.
Welcome to today's episode. We have an incredible guest with us here today, a leader with a rich career in the zoological world. Starting as an animal keeper, he became CEO of Chester Zoo in the UK, one of Europe's top zoos and one of the most visited in the UK, with an incredible 2 million visitors annually. During his tenure, he oversaw major growth and led national and international conservation efforts. Now, I'm not sure if people are going to guess who this is, but he now serves as the director of Werribee Open Range Zoo in Australia, where he has successfully delivered the 91 million zoo expansion, including the world-leading elephant trail. With his strong background in zoo leadership and conservation, a prominent figure in global zoological community, and Wyndham's very own, we're excited to have him here with us today on our show. Welcome, Dr. Mark Pilgrim. How are you?
Thanks for those kind words, Lee. I'm great, thank you. Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It is so wonderful having you here today. I know that I've been really looking forward to this particular this conversation here today because we've had some really exciting news happen in this area. But before we get to that, I know you already, but our listeners don't. Tell us about Mark. Who is Mark?
Wow, okay. So I grew up in a big family in a big city of Portsmouth in the south of England, and had this love of animals from a small kid, probably from my mum, I think, although all of my family were either military, Royal Navy, or engineers, and so I had no idea what it meant to work with animals. You know, how did you get to work with animals in a big city? So kind of long story short, I ended up working engineering, got made redundant as a 17-year-old and went back to college and eventually went to university and studied zoology because there were no jobs at that time in the UK, in the south of England. And I loved it. And I just thought it'd be fun working in a zoo for 18 months.
Sounds like a movie, Mark.
Yeah. And then, you know, and 33 years later, I was still there. So kind of like, so that's how it all started. And it gets in your blood. And I just love being involved with animals and with zoos and the conservation work that goes along with it. It's been fantastic.
That is, you know, you have, I think, what I consider a dream job. I would absolutely love to work with animals. I've got, you know, a similar view to you. Love the animals. They're so raw. They're them. You almost know where you stand. They, no nonsense about them. And, you know, you respect an animal, whether it's a reptile or a bug or a mammal or whatever it is. They're just incredible. So UK to Melbourne, Australia would have felt like a bit of a heat wave coming over here from there.
And, you know, I think, you know, so it's been 3 years now. And 4 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that I'm sitting here in Australia talking to you on a podcast. So it came about because I left Chester Zoo during COVID times, and I've been the CEO for 11 years. I've been there a long time. I could have stayed there till I retired. I was ready for a new challenge in life. I was ready for something else. And so I actually left and became a consultant, which was great. And I worked in East Africa and the US, which wasn't easy during COVID times, but and I enjoyed that. I just missed being part of an organization. You know, just that being involved in zoos. And then I'd known Jenny Gray, who's the incredible CEO of Zoos Victoria.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. And she'd been, you know, I'd known Jenny probably 15 years from conferences around the world. And the story is that it's absolutely true. So one bitterly cold morning, it was hailstones. I was walking my dog in the hills of North Wales and Jenny Gray phoned me on my mobile, which was odd because she's not really phoned me. And she told me that the previous director was retiring from Werribee and would I be interested? And I think my response at the time was, Australia, Jenny? Really? Kind of like, I hadn't even considered it. And she said, well, think about it. Kind of like, you know, it'd be good to apply. So I hadn't even considered it at that point. a time. And of course, I went back. I've got 2 grown-up kids. They're now 20 and 22, and my eldest son already lived in Australia. That's another part of it.
Yeah.
And said to them, I had this call from Jenny. And they went, yeah, that sounds
Wow.
fantastic. So, okay, well, let's start the process. And obviously there's, Zoos Victoria, the government organisation, and it seemed like an endless stream of tests and interviews and all of that stuff. And and then before I knew it, I was on the plane heading out with a one-way ticket. So yeah,
Wow.
it's really exciting, actually.
And no regrets.
Absolutely none at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely best thing I ever did.
That's fabulous. And, Australia is a beautiful country. What's not to love, really?
Absolutely. And it really is. And actually, it's funny because, dealing with people every day, I often have to remind people of that. The grass is always greener. Well, it's pretty green here.
It is. It is. And we do forget that. We absolutely do forget that. So fast forward now, 3 years. I know a lot has happened in 3 years, but what's probably, there's some exciting stuff which we can talk to now. We know that the zoo has had some little migration of its own and some new guests. Talk to us about that. Those elephants, they're incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it is incredible. And I guess if I take just like a step back a little bit. So one of the things that I did while I was the CEO at Chester Zoo was at a time when there were concerns about elephant welfare in the UK and in zoos everywhere, to be honest. And so the government set up something called the Elephant Welfare Group, which was set up with a whole number of zoo people, with welfare scientists, with anti-zoo people, and it was to drive forward change over a 10-year period for elephants in the UK zoos. And I was asked to chair that group. And I remember very well kind of like getting on a train early morning, train from Chester to London, and feeling slightly sick because it was always a really challenging meeting, to be honest. But and I did that for 5 years as chair, and I stayed on for another 5 years. And we made some real differences, to be honest, that I'm really pleased about. But never did I consider that when we talked about all those things that would really make a difference to the lives of elephants under human care, would I get the chance to put that into practice? And that's what Werribee was. It was a chance to put all of that, years of experience, and all of the experience of the elephant staff at Melbourne Zoo at the time, and the team who went out from Melbourne to all the best elephant facilities in the world to pick and cherry pick all the nicest bits and bring. So all of that melting pot really was just, it was a fantastic opportunity. And I'm really so lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you've got my dream job there, Mark. So why elephants? I mean, why are you drawn so much to elephants?
Yeah, look, there's something about elephants. So I have to say, kind of like, I've been involved in all sorts of species, all for a whole number of times. It's not just elephants for me, but there's something about elephants which, it's partly their size, but more than just their size, they have such a presence.
Yeah.
So when you're around them, they're quiet, generally quiet. They move slow. It's just something very. They just have a real presence about them. They all have a personality, and so there's just, when you get to know elephants, they are very special, which I guess is not surprising. We're all drawn to elephants. I once saw some stats that said that, across the UK, for example, almost 1 in 3 houses had a statue or an emblem of an elephant somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, it's huge. So elephants are really important. And of course, across their range, of South Asia, right the way through Southeast Asia, a huge range originally, they're seen as gods and kind of like revered.
They're very symbolic.
So hugely important culturally.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly the attraction. There's just something special about elephants.
Yeah. I know for me, I look at an elephant, and this might be a bit ironic, but as you mentioned, their size, but they're so gentle.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of times people actually connect those two together because they are very intimidating. And let's face it, you don't want an elephant running towards you. The big bull is a scary thing, but they are just so gentle and they're so timid, and their personalities are so fragile as well. They're beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and look, that's all true. They also have other sides to them. They can be, at times they can be aggressive and they can be extremely dangerous and all of that side of them. But the other part that I think is really special is their connections with each other. So that herd structure, which is matriarchal, so it's a female herd, led by that adult female leader and her related offspring. It's such a tight family herd, and so actually, almost you can't think about a single elephant. They're not a whole until they have that herd structure around them, and what's special about what we've got at Werribee. So we've got
Yeah.
3 generations of adult females and the youngsters. And that's how a herd in the wild works. They're not just
Yeah.
strangers who've come together to group. These are related females who kind of like lead that herd. And that's just, and so, that's very special. To be able to do that within the zoo environment is very special.
Yeah. And how many elephants do we have there at the moment?
So we've got 9. We've got the
9.
adult bull, Luk Chai, and then we've got the herd of 8, which includes another little boy who is one of our 3 2-year-old calves.
Little baby. He's
Little Roy.
very cute. Very cute. So now we know that the CEO of a zoo is more than just elephants. There are lots of different animals there with giraffes and rhinos. I know we went to an event that the committee held a couple of weeks ago at, the beautiful Small Mansion there. And we had to drive past the zoo, and to my right was 4 giraffes walking past, the rhinos waddling along with a couple of zebras in the background. And it was just incredible to say, wow, this is Wyndham. We've got this in our backyard. But I can imagine, though, that as a CEO of a zoo, your day would be incredibly different every single day. What does that look like on any given day? As the management of staff, the management of animal, the conservation overlay, everything in between.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I guess that's why I love it, because you never quite know what's coming next. I mean, if I talk about today, for example, so I try to spend a day a month or a morning a month out with the teams. So this morning I was working, sitting watching the training of the gorillas, watching our 3 gorilla boys being trained. And then I did a presentation to our visitor services staff about how important they are, ready for the Easter holidays. And then I come here and do this podcast with you, Lee, and have these conversations. And then we've got an important VIP coming in this afternoon. So often it's about all of those sort of things, but no day's the same. So and for me, it's also about that long-term looking, right? So, as the director, I'm always trying to find money. I'm always trying to find ways that we can develop, and we're talking to project partners, stakeholders, as well as the day-to-day stuff of one-to-ones with staff and all of the usual budgetary and HR issues that every organisation faces.
Yeah. And it's a good point that you raised about the money element, because a lot of people may not realise that the zoo is a not-for-profit.
Right.
And the purpose really is about conservation of the animals, whereas, zoos have had quite a shift over the years where we once had these animals in these really small enclosures to now this shift about the conservation and their preservation and how we can protect them and the endangered species and really the educational purpose and journey along the way. So what does that element of conservation really mean to you and the zoo?
So I guess that's what gets me out of bed every morning. Actually,
Yeah.
it's that whole, and it's complex. And it's all the things you talked about. And one of the reasons that I was keen to come to Zoos Victoria is in terms of that direct conservation of species within Victoria that are critically endangered. Zoos Victoria is fantastic. The 27 what we call our fighting extinction species. Some of those are only surviving because of the work of Zoos Victoria and partners. I mean, that's incredible. And we know that Australia has a huge number of extremely threatened habitats and species. And of course, people don't always realise, but actually the Victorian grasslands here out west is the most endangered habitat in Australia.
Yeah.
And so it's just seen as grassland, but actually it's critically important. So that's the bit that really drives me. And you're absolutely right. So part of that understanding of getting youngsters to understand why the environment's more important than social media and all of that other stuff for the future is what it's all about for me. And actually coming into the zoo, if what brings people to the zoo is the elephants and the rhinos and the giraffe, which have their own conservation story, and that's what is the hook that connects them towards understanding nature and wanting to know more about the environment, then kind of what it's about, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And appreciating that we often forget that we are a species in the ecosystem, that everyone seems to forget that we are just, a part of it. So we do have that responsibility that without the beautiful animals and Mother Nature, we actually wouldn't exist either. So it is quite a story that you're trying to tell there through zoos.
No, that's right. I mean, from me, one of the great learnings over the last 3 years is working with the First Nations people.
Yeah.
Because they absolutely understand their place in nature.
Yeah.
Unlike us Westerners who kind of have felt ourselves above nature or guardians of, you're absolutely right. Actually, we're just part of it.
Yeah.
And so there's real learnings there that have been important for me on a spiritual level, I think, since I arrived in Australia. That's so, and I love that stuff, and I'm learning all the time.
And that's what I think the animals teach us.
Right.
Just being present, and they don't have those complexities that we impose on ourselves. It's it's refreshing I know whenever I go to the zoo and I look at the animals, I always feel a sense of calm. And whether I'm looking at them, I almost, think to myself, what are you looking at?
Right.
I know I had an experience a few years back, which I might have shared the story with you, where I had an opportunity to go through the zoo as part of a private breeding program with the Plains Wanderer, and through another incredible organisation called Trust for Nature, where it was found on some private land, and it was fabulous, and you're doing incredible work there. And this is the type of work that a lot of people wouldn't actually necessarily know. But after that, putting that little lovely lady into her enclosure, we went through a tour of the zoo, and one of the camels, Vera, which I remember distinctly, who stuck her head in the bus and wanted to give me a big kiss, and those big lips and chops of this big head. Is Vera still there? Is she still causing chaos?
Vera was one of the real characters and was often doing that. That's those experiences that people remember. Actually. And so it's making those experiences and those connections to actually the important stuff that the zoo talks about. And you're absolutely right. I mean, so for me, another part of, we talk about the elephants, which is absolutely world class. I mean, it is the best facilities in the world, in my opinion. And I think I've visited close to 400 zoos across the US and Europe. And so I have a lot of zoo network on my social media, and I put out that we've just developed the best facilities of elephants in the world. And I had a lot of comments back saying, "Well, you can't say that," kind of like. And so I actually put a bit of a challenge out and said, well, if anybody's got anything better than this 21 hectares for a multi-generational herd with choice and control the way they have, let me know. I've had nothing back, Liz. So kind of that says a lot, right? But apart from the elephants, we've also got that lower savannah, as you were talking about.
Yes.
And it's so special. I mean, that's just a beautiful, it's just such a beautiful area with the white rhino and the giraffe and the zebras and the at the eland. I mean, every now and again I can just take a vehicle and drive down to the lower savannah, and I mean, it's the closest thing to being on the African savannah you're going to find without getting on a plane, right? I mean, it's incredible.
And it's here in Wyndham.
And it's here in Wyndham, absolutely.
So do you ever have a very stressful day and just say, that's it, I'm out of here, grab a vehicle, burn it on the savannah? Does it calm you?
I'm not going to say I burn it on the savannah. But no, it is nice to kind of like, and I work in a zoo, and I'm often in meetings, and there's days where I'm, online and I'm just emailing, et cetera. But yeah, it is nice when you can just find half an hour and just go for a drive or just go for a walk and just, and actually just see people enjoying being in that environment, and particularly seeing kids being excited. And I think, it's really special.
You must pinch yourself every day. I know it comes with a lot of stresses, but the rewards of actually seeing those animals being so well looked after and preserved, and again, the conservation elements around it, that must be rewarding.
Yeah, and actually for two reasons, Lee. If I'm honest, I mean, I still have that, I love being in Australia. I feel like it's a real privilege to be here. And there are days when I'm just, I'm a real birdo. So kind of like, and there's cockatoos or there's pelicans or there's lorikeets, and I have to pinch myself that I'm not on holiday. I live here. It's kind of like, that's lovely. And then being in the zoo, absolutely. And look, there's so many reasons why working at Werribee Zoo and working for Zoos Victoria is special, but part of it is the people. We've got such a nice people culture there, and kind of like, from the first time that I stepped into the door, and it was new for me, it was kind of like a new continent, a whole new, working for a government organisation for the first time, I was made so welcome.
Yeah.
And actually, I just feel that hasn't changed over kind of like over 3 years. We've got some brilliant people around the organisation, and that's actually that's what your life's about, right? It's the people you're
Absolutely.
dealing with day in, day out that actually make it.
You spend a lot of time at work, so you do need to be happy, and the people do absolutely make or break a place.
Yep.
And and Zoos Victoria is a much larger organisation than just Werribee Open Range Zoo. But speaking to the people, how many people do you employ here in the zoo?
So we've got a lot of. So we're about 150 FTE.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of part timers, a lot of casual staff, and so yeah, we've got a pretty big staff.
Yeah.
And interestingly, comparing to many of the European zoos that I was working with, then there's more staff here.
Yeah.
And there's much more focus on welfare and training, and so that level of care that Zoos Victoria gives to make sure that actually, that just this morning, for example, I was watching with a team training our 3 beautiful adult male gorillas who are able to do chest X-rays.
Yeah.
So, and just the time it takes, just spending with those animals, building up that relationship so that you can take a chest X-ray without having to dart them, and do you know what I mean? It's like
traumatize them.
Yeah, and that's beautiful to see, but it takes time.
Absolutely.
It takes, and that's cost. So
I've tried to train a dog. I can imagine how long that would take. We're still working on the fit, so it takes a lot of time. Yeah, I know, we'll get there. But I guess are most of those staff members, are they from Wyndham? How many travel outside of Wyndham? It's because you are quite a large employer here within the Wyndham region.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on the areas. So certainly, a lot of the visitor services staff, our cleaning staff, our works teams, our horticulture staff, a lot of locals. The life sciences teams probably less so. So we have quite a few South Africans who have worked in game parks and worked in South Africa in sort of safari, who have come across. So perhaps less so in life sciences, but yeah, across the board, vast majority of people are local.
Yeah, which is fabulous. Yeah. Absolutely fabulous being able to create those opportunities here for local people.
Sure, and that's really important in the project too. So that's sort of like, that local jobs first was a big part of the project, and I've got to tell you that everybody that I meet pretty much tells me that their cousin or their son or their father works on the project at some point. So
that's very well connected.
That's really nice, yeah.
And what about volunteers? Because I do know that you have a lot of volunteers there.
We love our volleys.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're brilliant, and absolutely, and yeah, we do have a lot of volleys, and they do a lot of, they make the day really special for people, because they're the ones who are just introducing and talking and and they love being there. And so again, I get so many nice messages from perhaps from parents of volunteers who say, how much volunteers given them the confidence to go on and move on, and so that's really nice. I think it's a really nice two-way relationship that we have with and a lot of retired people who just love talking about the animals and come in and just so yeah, we love our volleys.
Yeah, I think I'll be hitting you up for a volunteer role when I'm retired. I think it's right up my alley there, Mark. So you better still be around when that day comes. But how many animals do you actually have at the zoo? Because it's not just about the elephants or the giraffes. There's plenty of animals there, even those gorgeous meerkats that are around the cafe there. I've had a meeting there, it would have been last year now, and I think I was more engaged with the meerkats than I was with the meeting itself.
Everybody loves the meerkats. They're so lovely. Oh, look, so one of the things about the Open Range Zoo that makes it special is that we've got the space and we've got those landscape habitats, which means we can keep animals in natural grouping. So we can have large numbers of eland or big herds of oryx, and that's kind of like that's part of that whole welfare of the animals too. So we've got a proper herd of 9 related multi-generational herd elephants. We've got a natural group of zebras, and so that's what the space of an open range zoo does. It actually allows you to have those habitat scale large groups of kangaroos, and rather than small numbers. And that's massive actually, in terms of not only in terms of the way people perceive them, much more like we see in nature, but also for the animals themselves. So, and that's part of what's special about having an open range zoo, actually.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you've got so many different offerings there at the zoo, and some people may not be aware of it, but you can actually feed the giraffes, you can stay overnight, you've got run us through all of this. What are some of the things that you have there?
There's a lot. You're right. So we've got we call our slumber safari,
Yeah.
which is hugely popular, and kind of like there's nothing. And I live right close to where slumber safari is,
Yeah.
and so I'm used to it. But there's nothing like the noises you hear at a zoo
Yeah.
at night. And it's always interesting.
Yeah.
And so that's really popular. That's a great experience because people get to come, they get to go and do some of the other experiences before the night time. And we've got some fantastic chefs and kind of like so the food
Yeah.
offerings are really nice. So it's a real nice event to go and spend some time in the zoo. Nice food, nice wine, all of that stuff. Stay overnight and then do an early morning safari
Yeah.
tour. Kind of like it's unique, something you can just do, and there's not many
Yeah.
places you can do it outside of Africa, to be honest.
No.
But then there's all sorts of other things. So kind of we do our events. So we've got our beautiful big buses, what we call our prime mover bus, our big safari buses, and they're great. But if you want to go off track and do a special kind of smaller tour, then you can pay for our deluxe safari, which then the
Oh.
driver will take you a little bit away from the main drive, and kind of that's a paid for experience. And we've got our other experience with rhinos and a new experience coming up with elephants and kind of so look, Zoo Victoria is moving away from the old style of holding animals and feeding animals and touching animals, and it's much more about understanding them, spending time around them, talking to the staff, and getting that feel of just seeing them doing what they want to do rather than what we want them
Yeah.
to do. And so so there's been lovely experiences.
And that's the beauty of them. It's just about them being them and letting them be them. I think that's what the intrigue for me, that's what intrigues me and draws me to the animals, because you want to see them as natural as possible. You're right. We've moved way past the performance, and it's always lovely to cuddle where you can. Don't get me wrong, I would still cuddle and touch and all the rest of it because it's unique and it's different, but completely understand that it's about them and their preservation and being respectful to their space as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's modern zoos. And Zoos Victoria is leading the world in that, and we know that's really important for the animals, but it's also important for people's perception. So,
Yeah.
one of the big drivers behind the whole elephant design was let's let elephants be elephants. How do we just let them do what they need to do? And it can be a challenge because, of course, you've still got all of those responsibilities of healthcare, and that you can't just sort of like just let them go and just let them be. We've got to take care of them. Some of them are on medication and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's that real fine balance which I love about how do we just leave them to live their lives in the way they want to do it, but at the same time have that high level of care and veterinary care, and that they wouldn't get in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. So, do you have on-site vets there? You do.
Yeah, we've got a
They
whole
s-
vet team. Yeah.
Okay, and do they specialize in a particular species, or do they look after all the animals there?
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. So they look after all of the animals. And the other thing that's probably not well known is we also have a wildlife rescue hospital.
Oh, okay. No, I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, so our vets are dealing with hundreds and hundreds of wildlife cases coming through our doors every year, and so that's everything from koalas
Hmm.
and right through, and possums right down to to venomous snakes and whatever it may be. So it
Oh.
was set up as a after the fires and kind of as bushfire recovery, and with money from RSPCA, and particularly to be bushfire ready. So the challenge for us is kind of like how do we make sure that there's animals coming in every day, maybe whether it's dog attack or it's road car injuries or whatever it may be. So yeah, there's a lot of that goes on behind
So
the
is
scenes.
that just the normal public can bring in, or do they have to come through a special avenue? Because I can't imagine a lot of people bringing in a venomous snake
No,
to,
right, sure.
yeah.
So they'd normally go through wildlife carers
Mhm.
and wildlife rescue people, and so we've got a whole network of animal carers who bring things in. So nobody's got the ability just to hold all of these animals that are coming. The numbers are frightening, actually.
Yeah.
So we've got this whole network of carers who are just brilliant. So they'll bring them in, and we'll do the initial assessment, or our vets will do the assessment, do the veterinary care, then they go back with the carers for these certified carers who have been doing it for years, who look after these animals and then bring them back for veterinary care. So that's a huge service that the
Yeah.
Zoos Victoria does. And actually, you're right, not enough people know about it. It's part of that
No.
whole, part of our social license about kind of what the zoo does.
That's incredible. That was something I thought I knew a lot about zoos, but obviously I didn't. And it's really great to know that. So if anybody does, need that service, absolutely. So what other wonderful things that we may not potentially know, Mark? What is there? What other gems do you have there?
There's so much. So running a zoo, I always think is like running a small town sometimes.
Yeah.
You just kind of so everything from. But there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. Our education team
Mhm.
are just fantastic, and so all the school groups that are coming in, and
Can I
that
say
formal
there is
education.
nothing better than the sounds of little kids laughing and giggling and screaming and being scared. That to me, that's the most, my favorite sound in the world, as loud as they may be. It is lovely. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you
No,
there. It was just
but they're special days, right? So,
Yeah.
again, having been involved in zoos for 35 years, I talk to people all over the place, and they'll often say to me, "Oh yeah, I can remember a school visit when I was 12."
Yeah.
Everybody does, right?
Absolutely.
There's something special about those days, and
Yeah.
so for me, the important thing that we're trying to do, and Zoos Victoria does, is how do we make those magical days just more than a nice memory, but actually have something that's valuable for that person, but also for the future, for the environment. How do we use that hook to actually make people wildlife warriors and care about the environment and care about animals, and that's a future where people care about animals is really what it's all about.
Absolutely. So speaking of memories, what's your most favourite memory about the zoo or just your time here? Well, actually, you know what? Just in general, it's not just about the last 3 years. Favourite memorable moment across any zoo and any animal?
That's so hard. There's so many special moments. But I think I'm going to give you two. The first one was actually was at Chester Zoo. I was the curator, so I was responsible for the elephants. But I didn't work with the elephants every day like the keepers did. I didn't have that
Yeah.
special relationship that they did. But I'd be around fairly often, and so I had a very special moment where one of our beautiful female elephants called Tai. I was just in the background, and she'd seen me, and she came over and just kind of acknowledged that I was there. And I didn't have food. It wasn't and it was just like, and it gave me goosebumps because she was just saying hello.
Oh.
And so those sort of experiences are really nice. A similar one where with a group of chimpanzees at Chester again, where at that point my son, who's now 32,
It's a big
was
boy.
just a baby.
Yeah.
He was a tiny baby, and I took him into the zoo in the pram. And one of our beautiful old female chimps, Heidi, had just had a baby recently, and she hadn't. We didn't know which sex it was, and she was quite secretive about it. And she saw that I was in the crowd of people, just in my civvies, and she knew me. She came across, and she stood up on her tiptoes, trying to look into to see Ryan through the glass.
Yeah.
So I took him out and showed her,
Yeah.
and then she took her baby out from under her arm and showed me hers. And
you're
it's those kind
Now
of
that's
special
given
moments.
me goosebumps. Oh my
They're
God.
special moments.
They're very special moments.
And in Werribee, if I'm honest,
Yeah.
so when I got the job and I came out here, I hadn't seen Werribee. I'd Googled everything, and I did.
Yeah.
But walking through the main gate, and you walk into the entrance area, and just the theming, and it just feels like a magical place. And I remember thinking, yeah, I've done the right thing. The moment I
Yeah.
stepped in through those, so for me here, that was as a concern. It was a big change for me,
Of
and kind of
course.
like but walking through those gates, I almost immediately felt like, yeah, this is a special
You're
place.
home.
This is special.
Yeah. So have you bonded with any of the special animals here in Werribee? Any of those special moments?
I guess less so here,
Yeah.
but partly maybe that's
You've been
I have
busy.
been so focused on delivering this elephant project, to be honest. So kind of
Yeah.
like, I do try to get out, as I say, and sort of spend time with the animals, but less than I used to. So kind of like, no, not yet, but I'm working on it. But I'm working on it.
But there's more plenty years to come. So to that point, what's next now for the zoo? The elephants are settling in. What's on the horizon there for I guess for you and the zoo?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take those two things together, I guess.
Yeah.
So look, what we've done at Werribee is just world changing. It's fantastic, and it sets the platform for us to grow Werribee, Werribee Open Range Zoo, the visitation to grow that, and that then, because that money goes into developing the zoo, that means we can do more.
Mm.
But there's things we need to do in terms of visitor growth. So we need a second entrance at some stage, preferably to the west, where about a third of our visitors are coming from. We're not going to get everybody through the precinct as we grow, and that's becoming more challenging, particularly when there's events on in the park.
Just to orientate the listeners, the west being towards Geelong way?
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's, Werribee's made up of these sort of 4 40-minute experiences, and that's the kind of the overall plan. The Australian Trail, the African River Trail, the Elephants and the Waterhole Trail, and then the bus journey. And the African River Trail and the Australian Trail both need lifting. They both need a bit more investment to bring them up to the same quality as the other areas. So there's always things to do. There's always things that need doing. But one of the things we did with the expansion project, which was really important, people don't ever see, was we brought in infrastructure. So we put HV power under the Princes Freeway. We brought in water under the Werribee River. It was a huge amount of investment in getting that infrastructure. So that's our growth for the future. Nobody ever sees it, but it's probably, really important part of the legacy of that project.
Yeah. And that's something, absolutely people don't see or comprehend the magnitude of these developments and improvements, that there are so many different stakeholders that do play a part in that. So it's not just about what it produces or how it supports our local economy, but just the economy in general. There's so many moving pieces to enable it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, and like all zoos, I'm absolutely committed to make sure that, that Werribee is a really focused part of the community.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And look, there's some really special things about zoos. Zoos are so neutral for people, I mean, I love the fact that, Wyndham is such a diverse community, and zoos can be, I want everybody to feel not just welcome, but like it's their place.
Absolutely.
Whatever religion, whatever ethnicity, it's kind of, it covers everybody. And that being a real hub for the community is something that's really important to Zoos Victoria and really important to me as we develop. So kind of how do we make it so inclusive? Yeah.
And we are very fortunate here to have such a wonderfully diverse community within Wyndham that it's wonderful to have a place to call our own that everyone can own. But likewise, just, we're a stone throw away from the CBD. That's so many people. It's so accessible and so close to so many people. We're close to Geelong. We're close to Melbourne. We're not too far away from the Ballarats. We've got, 350,000 odd people here in Wyndham, and the zoo, the Werribee Open Range Zoo, is everybody. It's not just Wyndham's. But I know that when we last spoke, the visitor numbers are growing, and is it around about 500,000 at the moment that are coming in?
A bit more than that.
A bit more now?
Close to 800,000 last year.
Wow, that's incredible. So over 800,000 people just driving to see those incredible animals. That's wonderful, Mark. And what do you aim to be?
So I think the way we're currently laid out, we can get to 1 million visitors a year, which would be incredible. And you're right, that's really important for the local community, and I think that one of the things we've got to develop as we go forward is how do we get people to actually, I love the fact that Werribee Open Range Zoo is a world-class facility in the West, and one of the things that I've seen being here 3 years and being part of these business communities is how pleased and proud people are to have something that's world-class in the west of Melbourne, right?
Absolutely.
And so I love that. One of the things I think we need to do to really, if we're going to get 1 million visitors coming to Werribee, how do we make sure that we actually hold them here? How do we make sure that actually, we get more overnight stays, that we get people who then are really benefiting the local communities, or the restaurants and shops in the middle of Werribee, or the garages, or, actually driving in and driving out is one thing, but if we can get them to stay then and make that whole area a destination, then that really, really makes a big difference to the whole community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mark, it has been so wonderful speaking to you today. I've actually learnt a lot, and I have the utmost respect for you now because you are so calm amidst everything that's going on. And, yes, you have no hair. I understand why now, but you were so calm through all of that, and you were always such a pleasure and a joy to speak to. Now, if people do want to get involved with zoos, if they want to make a donation to help the incredible work continue here at Werribee Open Range Zoo and zoos in general, where do they go, Mark?
Easiest place, Zoos Victoria website.
Yep.
And lots of information there. become a member. All of the 4 zoos, come as often as you like. That's a really big step forward. And yeah, just come and see us.
Yeah.
Get in touch.
And the school holidays, make sure come and visit with the schools. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bring everyone along.
For sure. I mean, oh, look, just visiting the zoo, I want it to be a really special day out for everybody. But just the action of coming and paying to come to the zoo actually is doing some really great work for local wildlife and for conservation.
Yeah. And we shouldn't forget that, because you do such an incredible job, you and the entire team there at the zoo. So thank you so much, Mark. It has been a real joy, and I wish you and the elephants and all the other animals there a wonderful year ahead. It's going to be wonderful.
Thanks, Lee. It's really nice talking to you. Love
Thank
it.
you.